I'm sorry, yes, the American embassy in Liberia, in Mama Point, they put us in helicopters, flew us to the Ivory Coast, where they had a area where we stayed for maybe a day, and then next thing you know, we were boarding an airplane to come to the United States. Lyric and I landed in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where our flight landed us. And then from there, we headed to Baltimore, Maryland, where we went to stay with my aunt on my mother's side, my aunt Shirley. And so that's pretty much what happened. That's how we transitioned from Liberia into the United States, back, to this land after being gone for 10 years.
Hey there. Welcome to the very first episode of Africans Abroad, the podcast. This is your humble host, Christopher Eves Ricks. To be able to kickstart this podcast, I am fortunate to have with me somebody that I look up to very much. He is a Liberian residing in Maryland, USA, and he's a career man. He is a father to 3 wonderful children. And he's also a musician, a musical artist. Ladies and gentlemen, the very first African Abroad on the Africans Abroad podcast happens to be my oldest brother, Samuel Benedict Ricks Jr. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. And
Right.
welcome everybody to Africans Abroad.
Listen, man, I just have to say that I am really glad to have you here. The fact that you were able to take this time out of your busy schedule, even though you're my brother, I do not take it for granted at all. And especially that you're the first guest on this podcast. It means a lot to me.
Oh,
So
yeah.
welcome, man. Welcome.
And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be the first. It's gonna be a wonderful conversation. I know it will. So I'm glad to be here.
Yes, sir. I believe it will be. All right. So I just have to say this before we start. You've been invited on the podcast to have an honest conversation, an open and honest conversation through which you get to share your story and your journey as an African living abroad. And you, the star on the show right now, I just get to steer the direction in which we go, but you get to share exactly what you're comfortable with. The only thing is, as long as we don't use the platform to disrespect any individual, any group of people, or any geographical location, and I know we're good with that.
Absolutely. There'll
Correct.
be thing as that.
All right, I just have to say that I will be saying that to all the future guests on the show. So, yeah, so we can just move on and dive into this, man. Firstly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day outside. God is good, and I'm doing wonderful. No com-
Nice, nice, I like that. Introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them who you are at this point in time.
Okay. So as my brother stated, I'm Samuel Ricks. We have the same father. It's what, 7 of us.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm the one who is smack dead in the middle. Got 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, and I'm right in the middle of everybody. So, as he said, father, career man. I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. Their names Blair, Bryce, and Taya. Living in Maryland right now. I am an IT professional right now in the cybersecurity realm. I do contract work. and just taking it one day at a time, and trying to live life to the fullest. Be a father, be a teacher, a mentor. He also, Chris also mentioned that I am a musician. I do sing. I've been singing for, gosh, a long time.
Yeah,
Uh, I
overheard
dabble a
it.
little bit in some musicianship where I play a little bit of keys. But music is one of my passions. I'm definitely. I believe that's one of the reasons why I was placed on this earth to, put out a message through song. So I'm a
Hmm.
songwriter. I've produced music before. I'm currently a praise and worship leader at the church that I attend, which is Harvest Intercontinental Ministries in Albany, Maryland, formerly Bethel World Outreach Church.
For I've heard 1,000 stories of how they think you are, but I've heard the tender whisper of love, the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
Right, right.
So that's just some of what I do. And I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the music, and I enjoy singing. I enjoy hanging out, with the children and family and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yep, that's Sam right there. And you are the I think you're the only musician in the family.
Oh no,
I mean,
well, listen. You mean as far as the seven of us?
yeah, I
Well,
mean among the
yeah,
siblings. I
that
mean, I,
yeah.
I like I used to do a bit of singing too, but it was in a oh man, I can't believe I'm saying this here. Um, yeah, growing up, I a group of guys I grew up with. We used to try to imitate Boys to Men and the boy
Oh,
bands and stuff. And
we all
when my
did. We all did.
around around the time my voice started cracking up around 14, 15,
Uh,
like
yeah,
it was yeah. So I had to
yeah.
be the bass man. That's how it was called.
Well, I
So
tell you, you know, from being around our late father, I think he ingrained music in us. I remember sitting and listening to jazz music with him.
really,
I remember, oh yeah, I remember sitting down and listening to jazz with him. I remember one of his favorite albums was the OJ's Live, and he would always put that record on, and he would listen to that record. Um, I can tell you, even his favorite song on that album was a rendition of this song by Wildflower. She's a lady, and he
you
would
are
play that
kidding
thing
me.
over and over. Yeah,
I've
and he,
never heard that before, man.
oh,
I wonder where I got my jazz,
oh
my
man,
taste for jazz from.
our father was a jazz lover. He was a modern contemporary jazz lover.
Wow.
Um, and then stemming from that, I kind of got into the early stages of jazz, listening to Miles Davis and Monk and some of the other jazz greats. But yeah, he ingrained music in us at an early age, and even lyric is not a singer, but lyric is a songwriter. He's very gifted when it comes to like spoken word or rap.
Yeah, yeah. I think
He
I've heard a couple
Yeah,
of his
we
songs.
did, we did a song together. Actually, I wrote a song called "Remember Why," and Lyric did a rap on that song. And
Yeah,
and I've heard some amazing things from Lyric. So
really.
so yeah, music's in us, man. It's just in
Um,
us.
I'm gonna have to dive in that. That's exactly. You know what? You saying that. I mean, I'm just hearing that for the first time that Daddy liked jazz. I
Oh
did
no,
not know. I did not know he listened. I knew he liked music. He could sing. But I did not know that he was into jazz, and I got into into it a little bit too. Even now, like I listen to jazz a lot, and we could go so deep into
I
that, but
know.
let's stare back into the in the direction
Okay.
of what, yeah.
Hey,
Um,
one last thing, did you know he played the guitar too?
he did.
Yes.
Well,
Your
that I
father
knew.
played
That
the
I
guitar.
knew. Yeah, that I knew. I think I remember that from 4 or 5 years. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Jeez.
Go on and on about that. About that
Yeah. So,
guy.
Sam, you were interestingly, you were actually born in the U.S.
Yeah.
You were
Yes.
born in the U.S. That's why I started off saying that you're second generation. You were born in the U.S. and father and your mom were married at the time, and then moved back to Liberia when you were still a kid.
Hmm.
Why don't you take us back to where it all started from? For you, what from birth and what you remember before moving back to Liberia, and talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, July 31st, 1975 was when it all started. Like you said, mommy and daddy were living in East Orange, New Jersey at the time. And Renee, our older sister, she was born a year before I was, and I came in 1975. Our younger, well, your older, my younger brother Lyric came in 1977. But yeah, we lived in New Jersey. We lived in East Orange, New Jersey. Lyric, I believe, was born in Trenton.
Hmm.
Renee and myself were born in East Orange, which is in Essex County in New Jersey. So, after birth, grew up, went to preschool in New Jersey. Um,
And you
you know,
remember that? Do you
yeah,
remember? Yeah, you did.
I remember
Wow.
some of it, them dropping us off at preschool. I remember us, I vividly remember us coming out for recess every day and, running
Hmm.
around the blacktop, just playing with the other kids. And it was great. We didn't have much, but we made the best of what we had. And then my dad decided that he was going to move. He wanted to move the family back to Liberia.
Right.
So I remember them packing stuff in crates, and my dad shipped everything he owned back to Liberia to include his I want to say 1978 Cadillac Coupe de Ville.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Car back to Liberia too. It was red and with a white vinyl top. That thing was a thing of beauty. He shipped it. I think, that's why I think I have a love for Cadillacs as well because, you know, riding in that car back in the day. So yeah, he moved the family back to Liberia. I remember when he moved the family back to Liberia, we moved to Lakwazi,
Hmm.
over there by the airfield. We moved over there, and we started life in a new place. It was new to us, the kids, but not new to to mommy and daddy.
No.
And we just grew up, you know, in this new land. It was different. Um,
So, which
and
means your own country felt foreign to you at the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
it felt for because I had never been here. I had never
Right.
been to Liberia. That was my first time, and It was the year I turned 5, so it was 1980.
Hmm.
Um, when we moved a little bit before, towards the beginning of the year. I want to say around January or February was
Yeah.
when yeah, and we moved. Renee, Lyric, and myself, and we started school. Um, a year later was when my dad and mom got a divorce in
Hmm.
1981.
Hmm.
So at that point, the family split. Lyric and myself went to live with daddy, and Renee went to live with mommy. And so at that point, because he was trying to get on his feet. I think even before then there was a coup in Liberia on April 12th, 1980.
And that
And
was what I was gonna actually ask you about if you
yeah,
because you guys were in Liberia for the coup.
yeah, we were
Yeah,
there.
because
Yeah.
I also know the story that Daddy opened up a nightclub or something.
Yeah,
One of
yeah,
the most talked about nightclub at the time, and shortly after the coup took place, and he was robbed and he lost everything.
yep.
But do you actually remember anything from the coup that took place?
I remember Daddy having the club. Touch of Class was the name of the club. I remember him having the club, and I remember um, when the coup happened. They ransacked the place. They looted the place, stole everything out of it. He was in his. I remember him being in the car. He was about to go and look to see the damages that were done. And I remember somebody told him, sir, you don't want to drive that car right now in the city because you would be like a target, and you could possibly get killed. So he parked the car and covered it. I remember
Right.
he had to cover the vehicle because he didn't want to bring any attention to himself. Um, and so I remember us just being in the house. I remember sirens going off and things of that nature. But as a 5 year old, you really don't know what's going on.
No.
It was years later that we really, got to understand what had happened.
Hmm.
So, you know, that was a rough time period. I remember people hiding, and the streets were crowded with people, and it was from what you could watch on TV at the time or listen to on the radio. Remember listening to BBC. Just kind of learning about what had taken place.
Right. Okay, so fast forward a little bit, because that was your first experience of unrest in a country, in your country, in
Absolutely.
Liberia. Yeah, and then fast forward to 1990,
Mhm.
where at least from what I can recall, or what we all recall, the war started in Liberia. Um, that was when you and the other siblings went back to the U.S. Or because of that war, that started. You all went back to the U.S. You want to talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, prior to 1990, you know, life in Liberia was great. I mean, I couldn't think of a better place to, to spend my childhood. It was wonderful. We went to school. We did normal things. We had loving parents. My mom and dad still, even though they were not together, they still loved us. They still took care of us. They still looked after us. I remember, in 1989, when this thing first started, and we started hearing rumors that, there was going to be some civil unrest, and it was starting, towards the northern part of the country, in the rural areas. And, it had not hit Monrovia yet. So we were kind of just, living just normal lives. And then as time went on, it gradually moved closer to Monrovia. And then next thing you know, um, we were hearing word that, they were right on the outskirts of Monrovia. When that happened, the United States government, in trying to be cautious of their citizens that were residing in Liberia at the time, they reached out to my mother,
Hmm.
who we were living with at the time, to make sure that we were registered with the embassy, and that we had passports and things like that in place. Shortly after doing that, they announced that they were going to, as the civil unrest moved closer, into the city. The United States government decided that they were going to airlift or evacuate their citizens.
Right.
Um, so at the time, Renee was already here in the United States. Madia was already here in the United States. So it was just Lyric and myself. Um, and we
And
were,
your mom was still in Liberia too.
yeah, mommy was still in Liberia.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, daddy was still in Liberia as well. Everybody was still there. So, they're not, the U.S. government announced that they were going to evacuate their citizens because war was getting closer to the city. So we ended up being evacuated. We flew to the Ivory Coast for a day. And actually, we got on helicopters from Liberia, from, I want to say, the Liberian embassy
Yeah.
in my point.
Yeah.
They
The American
put
embassy in Mama Point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, the American embassy in Liberia, in
Hmm.
Mama Point. They put us in helicopters, flew us to the Ivory Coast, where they had a area where we stayed for maybe a day,
Hmm.
and then next thing you know, we were boarding an airplane to come to the United States. Lyric and I landed in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
That's where our flight landed us, and then from there we headed to Baltimore, Maryland, where we went to stay with my aunt on my mother's side, my aunt Shirley. And so that's pretty much what happened. That's how we transitioned from Liberia into the United States, back, to this land after being gone for 10 years.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, I know that story a bit, but it's a different thing hearing it directly from you like that.
Yeah.
Um, so you guys are in the States, and upon arrival, what were your first impressions? What were your experiences? Being in another. I mean, even though you were born in the U.S., but this was a strange country to you now. It was you living abroad. What were those experiences like?
I tell you, when we got off the plane, I never forget, and I'm inclined to say that this was CNN. I remember Lyric and myself being interviewed by a reporter, and I want to say it was CNN that did the report
Yeah.
about people that were evacuated from Liberia to the United States. And we did a little quick interview with some reporter. I believe it was CNN. After that, we moved to, went to Baltimore City and lived with my aunt Shirley. It was a culture shock, to
Right.
say. Um, we came with the clothes on our backs. We didn't pack much. And so, we came here and we really didn't know what to expect. Really didn't know what to expect. We knew we were coming to America, but we didn't know what to expect. And when we got here, it was just a culture shock. Um, especially, when we started going to school, and that was definitely difficult. That was a real difficult part, transitioning from school in Liberia to school here in the United States. And when I say difficult, I don't mean on an academic level, but I just mean adjusting to the way of life,
Yeah.
to the culture here, to the and I was in high school, so I had to repeat the ninth grade, um, and Lyric was in middle school, and so, it was just completely different than anything we had ever experienced. In Liberia, we wore uniforms to school, and you get here and you're wearing regular clothes, and um,
Could you? I'm sorry to cut you off. When you say difficult, that wasn't academic related. Um, could you give a point or two on like specifically? I know you talk about culture shock when you first came, but you're in. I mean, school as an African. I mean, you had an accent,
Yep.
Liberian accent. It's not like you could put an American passport over your head and say, "Look, I'm American," so don't treat me different,
Yeah.
So, what were some of those specific experiences like that made it so difficult?
Oh yeah. I mean, one, you got called all kind of names,
Right.
by the kids at school. Of course, you're a victim of bullying. You know, I remember this one instance where we're in the gym for gym class, and this guy tried to bully me. And it was crazy because of course, I'm in a different land, in a different school, and it wasn't just any type of school. It was a high school in Baltimore City.
Mhm.
So that was rough within itself. And so we experienced bullying. I remember, like I was saying, the kid chased me down the hallway to take what he wanted to take from me, and I remember it being a girl who hid me in a classroom. It was her classroom. I wasn't even supposed to be there. Right before the class started, she hit me in the classroom, in the back of the class. She said, "Well, just sit here until he goes away, and then you can go to your class." And so that happened. I ended up fighting the guy
Mhm.
on the basketball court away from school in the neighborhood. So it was just because you had an accent. Everybody called you names because you had an accent, and because you weren't dressed like them. They look down at you. They look down upon you. And so everything from name calling to bullying to you know treating you less than, even though we had the same skin color, but you know they treated you different. And so
Critical.
we adjusted, or I should say made the best of it.
Yeah.
When you're new in a place, you don't have friends, it's a little difficult, but I made a few friends,
Hmm.
and those few friends, American guys, they were really cool, really nice guys. And they helped make things easy. They helped me navigate through the ninth grade. And like I said, at the time, we were in Baltimore, so we were with my aunt. A year later, my mom was able to leave Liberia and come to the United States. So I ended up leaving that school eventually.
And Baltimore, I mean, it's majority blacks, or your high school was a majority black high school.
Oh yeah, it was a
Yeah.
majority. Yeah, black high school. Yeah, it was majority black, and so kids,
Yeah.
they're gonna
Of course.
kids and kid stuff and mean and evil stuff, but you grow and you learn to fight back. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things that being in that environment taught me. Hey, don't let anybody take advantage of you. Don't let anybody bully you. Don't let anybody, try to, you know, treat you wrong.
Right.
Fight back. And so I ended up doing that. And after doing that, that guy left me alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
At what point did you feel more American? Could I say that?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Where you could hang out with friends, meet new people, and nobody was asking where you were from.
You know, Towards the end of my ninth grade year was
Hmm.
when I kind of started feeling a sense of normalcy. Um, if I can say that, yeah, a sense of normalcy. And then when my mom moved, when my mom left Liberia and came in 1991, we ended up moving with another aunt, so we had to switch schools. So at that point, we left Baltimore City and we moved to Prince George's County in Maryland, which is um, at the time probably about a good hour from Baltimore. Um, little, the neighborhoods were still kind of rough neighborhoods, but um, went to a different school. Then I ended up at Northwestern High School, which is in Hyattsville, Maryland. Went to Northwestern High School. At that point, I'm in the 10th grade. And, again, I'm in a new environment, didn't know anybody, um, enrolled in school. And shortly after, I was able to, from being in Baltimore and dealing with that atmosphere, that environment, I was able to transition pretty quickly into my new school. And I ended up making friends pretty quickly. I ended up making friends, at a rapid pace, and some of those guys that I made friends with, I'm still friends with today.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Hmm.
Wow. So, past high school era, you considering yourself to be a grown man now and about to get in the business of life, grown man life.
Yeah.
Um, what did you do after that, relating to your career and further schooling?
Well, I would, I the last little piece about high school, because a lot of the things that happened from the 10th grade to the 12th grade really helped my trajectory into life after school. With the friends that I met, and it was in high school when I really started singing,
Hmm.
in the 10th grade, and I met a group of guys, and we put together a singing group called Fifth Period because we met in our fifth period chorus class.
So a
And
picture of that.
we ended up winning the school talent show, and we decided to keep the group together. And these young men, Andre, Terrence, Darshard, Charles, and myself, and another buddy of ours, Eric, and another friend, Michael. Man, we hung together, and those guys really showed me, and they really helped me navigate through life. Mom was working, and so I spent a lot of time at around those guys, and at their homes, and at their mom's homes and stuff like that. And they really helped me, man. So 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. By the time I graduated, I was somewhat of a popular person in school,
Hmm.
because of singing and music. um, it was in high school that we took our first trip to the Apollo Theater to perform at the world famous Apollo Theater. I can say that I've been on that stage 5 times and
Wow.
got booed off only one time.
That's an experience.
Yeah, so that was so being in a music group and singing and doing these different things really kind of opened up my mindset, when it comes to life in this country, and you know, really kind of determining what did you want to do. Growing up, I always wanted to be a doctor.
Hmm.
I remember my parents buying me a Fisher Price doctor set when I was probably 3 or 4. And you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to be a doctor. Um, and then in high school I got introduced to music, and even my first year of college at Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland, I did pre med, and after my first year in that school, I said, look, this is for the birds. I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I said I want to do music. I want to do something else, and so speaking towards after high school, me and these guys, we continued singing. Um, we got to sing in front of everybody knows him as P Diddy. We
Hmm.
got to audition for him for his record label. Um, we went several places. We performed. We got to perform with some big name acts. We went different places on the East Coast to perform music and things of that nature. So um, I
That
was
that
really
wasn't the time. That wasn't the time you got to perform with Eric Robinson, was it? Or was that
well.
later
That
on
was
in
years
life?
later when I actually performed with Eric Roberson. That was
Okay.
years later. That was actually when I joined the band. In DC.
Okay.
Uh, but you know, everything that happened between that period. We were with the singing group. We did that up until around 1999,
Hmm.
and then the group kind of broke up, and everybody kind of went their separate ways. And I think out of everybody that was still in the group, I was the only one who continued doing music.
Really?
Um, uh, Met a guy by the name of Greg Rice, really good friend of mine. He's like a big brother to me. Um, Met him while the group was doing a talent show at City Place Mall, and he heard us and wanted to work with us. And he was a producer. Um, and we started working together. The group kind of dismantled, but him and I continued our friendship. And, to this day, Greg and I have worked on several projects when it comes to music. And so he introduced me to live music. So from, with regards to what I was doing at the time, I did a year at Montgomery College pre-med. I said, you know what, it's not for me. I'm not going to do it. Um, and so I just kind of stuck with doing music at that time. And up until and when I met Greg in 1999, Greg introduced me to live music. Around the same time was when I got introduced to the IT industry. I was working at a job at the time, and they needed somebody to help the computer guy. And so I volunteered. They took me out of the mailroom, and I volunteered to help the computer guy. And while helping this guy set up computers and things of that nature, I started, my interest started to spark my interest, and I would ask him several questions about, how things work. And during that time, if you were into computers and you knew a lot of stuff, people weren't sharing knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say for sure, this guy wasn't sharing any knowledge. So I said, well, if he's not going to share it, I'm going to go and find it out for myself. I enrolled in 2000. I enrolled in a school called Computer Learning Center, and I did what was supposed to be an associate's degree in information technology. Right when we were about to graduate with the associate's degree, the school went bankrupt. They announced they were going bankrupt, and at the time, the state of Maryland, the Higher Education Board of Maryland, gave us two options: to either transfer our credits and pay the loan, or if we didn't transfer our credits, they would pardon the loan.
Mm-hmm.
I took the latter. I did not transfer my credit. That way I didn't have to owe any money. But at the same time, they couldn't take the knowledge away from me. So after doing that, I took some certification classes, and I got my first IT job in 2001.
Mm.
Yeah. And I continued doing music throughout that entire time. I continued doing music as well, working with Greg, working with other artists. We wrote and produced songs that were recorded. And then years later, he reached out to me again and said, hey, I got this band that I put together and I want you to be a part of it. And, that was going from 2001 going into 2006.
And that was Let It Flow, the band.
Yeah, that was Let It
That's
Flow.
it.
And even in between that time, Blair was born in 2002. Bryce was born in 2004. So I started to kind of start my family at the time, and I was, putting my family together. Working my first IT job, and still continuing to do music.
Mm. Interesting. You mentioned the job that sparked your interest in IT. Why don't you talk us through your jobs, the different jobs you've had, and your experiences in acquiring these jobs? Difficulties or everyday, difficulties within the workplace. Do you think?
Yeah. You know, my very first job, in the IT field, usually the entry level IT job during that time was help desk, was somewhat of a call center type of setup where people would call in and you would assist them with some type of either proprietary software, or just regular networking things. And so, interestingly enough, you know, one of my friends from elementary school in Liberia, brother by the name of Edwin Kaliku. Edwin was already working in the IT field, and I saw Edwin at a party. I told Edwin that I went to Computer Learning Center and I was looking for a job in IT. And Edwin said, "Okay, yeah, send me your resume." And I did, and Edwin helped me find my first job. He was working there as a software. I think he was doing software. He was in the software development He was on the software development team, and he brought me in. He recommended that I get hired by this company, and they brought me in at help desk level, which we did proprietary software support. So to break into the field usually is hard, but it really depends on who you know and if people and people you network with that can kind of get you into these different places. At the time, I got the job pretty easy, based on my knowledge and what I learned in at Computer Learning Center. So I got the job working, and I learned the software pretty quickly. Not only did I learn it, but I also started to help write manuals, the instruction manuals for the software. We would often teach some of the vendors how to use the software. So I got to do some of that. Most of my IT career has been dealing with like help desk, doing help desk work and desktop support work. And it wasn't until later on, like I want to say around 2015, that I broke into the cybersecurity realm
Mhm.
of things, and that's what I currently do now. So as far as difficulties, um, you know, a lot of times if you're not knowledgeable about certain things, it's kind of hard to break into a particular uh, place. Um, I found that if you didn't have experience was another reason why companies will not take a chance on you. I consider myself lucky. Well, I'm not even going to say lucky. I'm going to say I consider myself blessed,
Mhm.
because a lot of where I've been has been one because of the grace of God, and people, just either taking a chance on me or based on what I knew, and the amount of experience I had at the time,
Mhm.
they brought me in to do certain tasks. So it is difficult if you don't have the experience. It is difficult if you don't have the certifications that a lot of places require, and of course, if you don't have a degree in this particular field, it's somewhat difficult to break in. But a lot of times, if you know somebody and they can, maybe put a good word in for you, you can actually get some type of an entry level, and you can work your way up.
And that's pretty much how it is everywhere, networking, who you know to get you into what you want to do. So yeah, good point there. Um, with what you do now, would you say that with your job, your current job, would you say that you are contributing to your society, to make both social and economical contribution to your society to make it a better place?
Oh man, the work that I do now, I and the work that I do now is considered mission critical work.
Hmm.
Um, there's so many things that happen that we see the work that we're done actually being displayed either on TV, or you see it in the newspapers, um, you see it all over. The cybersecurity realm is it's a very intricate part of keeping a country safe, keeping um, hackers from destroying, hours and hours of work, or keeping them from, um, destroying a lot of work that's being done. So, we're really at the front line. We're really on the front line of of security.
Right.
Making sure that, and we hear it on the news all the time. We hear different things that happen when it comes to the cybersecurity and cyber war, and we hear it in commercials and when people are advertising certain things. everything from your personal identification, identity theft and things like that. So, you know, it's mission critical work. It is very, very important, and it's what keeps us secure as a nation. So, it's really important work. I guess that's my point that I'm trying to really
Mm-hmm.
drive. Is really, really important work. For the people who do it, it's you love to do what you do. Um, and every day is a different day in the cybersecurity realm. And there's so many different aspects of cybersecurity. There's so many different avenues of cybersecurity. Everything from policy to the hands-on work. That cybersecurity analysts do. So it's very, and it is very rewarding work. It's very rewarding because you actually get to see your work being displayed sometimes, um, either on TV or in the news or that type of stuff.
I love that. I love that. I mean, if I could just, um, I do feel that same sense of fulfillment with with the work that I do too.
Yeah,
Even having the understanding of how things work around us and not taking it for granted.
I,
Um,
I
yeah,
100%. Yeah,
yeah, because we do, you do cybersecurity, so you see, all our internet, uh, day-to-day internet activities. You see it
hmm
differently from what other people will see it like, like it's just normal,
yeah,
and taking
yeah.
for granted that people work behind closed doors to keep it safe.
24
Um,
hours, 365 days of the year. There are
yeah,
people who are literally doing the work to keep nations like the United States and like Norway safe from cyber crime, from cyber thieves and cyber, adversaries. So yeah, it's like I say, it's definitely rewarding. Definitely rewarding.
right. All right, man. So let me ask you something. What would you say are the day-to-day challenges you face as an African living in the U.S.?
One of the things that I've noticed being being a black man and being a man of African descent, um, Africans are not really looked at. I would say it wasn't until maybe recently, and I would say maybe within the last 5 to 10 years, that the Africans have Africans have really been embraced in the United States. There has always been somewhat of a struggle between the African American and the African, and where they fit into this society. Um, the one thing we,
Why do you think that is? What?
I think it's for lack of a better word, I think it's ignorance.
Right.
I think the main reason is ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I mean that the African Americans haven't really taken the time to learn about their African brothers and sisters.
Hmm.
And as a result, um, you treat them a certain way because you don't know them. So, that has happened. And I will say over the last 10 years, I believe that the African Americans have really embraced Africans in this country. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still, you still find those times where um, African Americans treat Africans a certain way, or and vice versa. Africans treat African Americans a certain way because of stereotypes and all of those different things. And of course, stereotypes all they derive from ignorance. When you don't know about something, or you only know a little bit about it, you tend to treat it a certain way or talk about it a certain way. And I think Africans and African Americans have done that in this country to each other. And I think now there's been more of an awakening with African Americans and with Africans. where this divide is starting to be done away with. You know, they're starting to come together. You know, it's crazy because I always say, man, it took a fictional place like Wakanda
Right.
to really help African Americans embrace the continent and where they're from and the people who live there.
Mm.
And at first, I felt a certain way about it, but then I said to myself, you know what? Better late than never.
Mm-hmm.
Because for somebody like me who has lived in African country and have been on the ground and has seen and heard and know, African Americans don't know what they're missing out on, not
Right.
engaging in the continent of Africa, learning more about the continent of Africa. And then we find, like, I want to say last year or the year before COVID, there was Afrochella, where a large amount of African Americans decided to visit the continent, and I believe they went to Ghana, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was the year of the return or something.
Yeah, and I think that was a wonderful thing to happen,
Yeah.
where people, African Americans or Black people from the United States went to see and visit the land which their ancestors came from. Or because a lot of times in this country, you're only taught your African American history only starts from the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach you that um, there were three great empires in Africa. The Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire. They don't teach you that you were kings and queens and you were royalty in your country before you know they came and took us as slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one the challenge is there because of ignorance, but that ignorance is starting to go away because a lot of African Americans are starting to embrace their African brothers and sisters, and they're starting to embrace the continent from which their people came from.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a wonderful thing. I think as we continue to do that, you will see more African Americans visit the continent of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many people who have moved to African countries. Um, and I think it's a great thing, and I want to see more of that
Correct.
so that we can break a lot of those challenges and we can do away with a lot of those challenges that we faced in the past.
Mm. All right. All right. I love that. Um, what would you say that some of the privileges that you have as an African, a man of African descent, an African
Yeah,
living in the U.S. At this point in time?
you know, diversity is one of the main ones.
Yeah.
You can adapt. I can go around African people and I can blend right in, and I can embrace that African part of me. I can eat the food. I can understand most of what they're saying if they're not speaking a particular dialect or language. Um, I have several Ghanaian friends, Nigerian friends, Cameroonian friends, people from all over Africa. The church that I go to, Harvest Intercontinental, we embrace the fact that we're an African church in America,
Mm-hmm.
and but we're diverse as well. We have people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all countries. Um, that attend the church. We even have a place in the church called the Hall of Nations,
Mm-hmm.
and so many different flags from so many different countries hang in that Hall of Nations because we embrace diversity. We embrace the fact that we are all God's children, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what part of the continent you're from. You know, um, and so some of the privileges is being able to be among your African people and feel welcome and feel at home, as well as being among your African American people and feel welcome and feel at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I see myself as a bridge between African Americans and Africans because I can have conversations with African Americans and put away with a lot of the stereotypes that they have of Africans. And I can go to my African brothers and sisters and do the same thing, have a conversation with them and do away with the stereotypes that they have about African Americans.
It's so interesting that you would say that because if I would ask myself that same question, the first word that or phrase that comes to my mind is best of both worlds or best of
Yeah,
two worlds, you know.
absolutely.
And of course, where we live in Norway, it's not it's quite different from over there in the U.S. But I consider myself to be extremely fortunate. You know, being here, just the fact of being here and having some sense of the opportunities that others are searching for, you know,
Mhm.
back home. That alone is seen to be as a huge privilege to
Yeah,
me, but
yeah,
also embracing the fact that I enjoy a certain sense of Norwegian culture
yeah,
and being here and you know having Norwegian friends been to work and school
yeah,
and whatever and just being able to blend and you know I mean we speak a different language, you know,
right.
sometimes you even get to forget that it's, you know, it's a different language after after interacting every day like
Yeah.
that. But
Mhm.
then it's that effortless switch that you have, you know, that all of a sudden you're Liberian. So yeah, that's it's interesting that you say that because that's exactly how I feel too.
And I think you used the best phrase, the best of both worlds. And that switch you talk about, man, it happens so effortlessly, like you said, where when you're among Africans, you are African.
Yeah,
If you're among Americans, whether it be white Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Black Americans, you are an American, you
right.
know, and you can function and feel, you know, you don't miss a beat. You do not miss a beat.
Hmm.
Other than the different issues that we deal with here, when it comes to race relations and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I believe that's always. I don't think that's going away. I don't think it's ever going away, and it's because of the sinful nature of man. I like what my bishop said one time where he preached about racism, and he said racism is not a skin problem; it's a sin problem. You know,
Hmm.
um, so racism is always going to be here, but in the places where we can thrive and where we can, be ourselves, man. It's a blessing to be able to be among so many different people and still feel a part,
Yeah.
whether it be African people from any African country or any American that would embrace you.
Hmm.
You can feel a part. I mean, I remember, driving some folks one time and I was educating them about Liberia and the relationship that Liberia has had over the years with the United States of America. Going back to World War II, when
Hmm.
Roberts Airport in Liberia was used as a fueling station for American fighter jets, and just explaining that close relationship that has always been between Liberia and the United States. And you find that people don't really know about these relationships or don't really know how important these relationships have been in the past.
Hmm.
They don't know, and so I find myself educating people at times about you know Africa as a whole, as a continent, but in particular Liberia and the relationship they have with the United States. I mean, the flags are even
Yeah.
similar. As
Yeah.
opposed to 51 stars, you got one star. You got the stars and stripes the same way. And that's how close these countries have been. And it's unfortunate that over the years, there's been a diminishing of that relationship. But hopefully, that's something that African Americans can champion here in the United States, and that Liberians here in the United States, like you said, in the diaspora, can champion. Show how close the relationship is, and that way it'll help, in the development of Liberia, and it will help in the development of people's minds when it comes to the continent that their ancestors came from.